For a long time, the galaxy believed it understood humanity. Most alien nations thought humans were friendly, curious, and sometimes a little stubborn. They were seen as a species that liked solving problems through talking instead of force. Whenever trouble happened, humans were the first ones to suggest forming a group, making a plan, or creating a peaceful agreement. This habit made many species respect them, but it also made some others think humans were easy targets. Human ships traveled from world to world with open hands. They shared medicine with species that had never seen such technology. They helped build water systems on planets where people had lived with drought for centuries. They trained young diplomats for species who had never even heard the word before meeting humans. Everywhere they went, they tried to help and listen. But what most outsiders did not understand was that this kindness came from strength, not weakness. Across the galaxy, incidents began to happen that tested humanity's patience. Sometimes a small group destroyed a human research outpost and then claimed it was an accident. Other times, a patrol ship vanished near a border, and the neighbors refused to explain why. A trade convoy carrying food for refugees was blocked for no reason beyond someone wanting to show power. Every time something like this happened, the humans stayed calm. They sent messages, requested meetings, and tried to settle things without anger. They believed everything could be solved through understanding. Many species admired this attitude, but others quietly laughed at it. They thought humanity was soft. They thought humans were afraid to get angry. Some even believed humans had no real strength at all, only words. These ideas spread slowly, like rumors that grew stronger each time humans chose peace over retaliation. A few alien leaders said that humans were holding the galaxy back with their endless patience. According to them, humans avoided conflict not because they were strong, but because they were too timid to face it. Inside human councils, this view was known. But the leaders agreed that reacting with anger would only make things worse. They wanted a future where all species lived without endless wars. So they chose to tolerate the insults, the small attacks, and the disrespect. What they didn't know was that something bigger was coming, something that would test their patience more than anything before. There was a small planet on the outer fringes of human space called Helion 5. It was a quiet world with forests, wide deserts, and a population mixed with humans and several alien species who lived there peacefully. It had no armies, no secret bases, nothing that anyone would consider valuable. Yet humans had built a small humanitarian hub there. They sent food to nearby systems from this world. They treated patients in free clinics. They offered shelter to families running from unrest in nearby territories. Many aliens trusted humans because they knew that on Helion 5, everyone was welcome. But near this peaceful world, tensions had slowly grown. A coalition of aggressive species who disliked humanity's rising influence whispered among themselves that Helion 5 was the perfect place to test how far humans would bend. They believed humans were too gentle to defend themselves. They had convinced themselves that as long as they kept the attacks small and confusing, humans would never respond with force. The people living on Helion 5 were unaware of these plans. They woke up each day to the same gentle sun, the same calm winds, and the same peaceful routine. Children from different species played in open fields. Scientists worked in greenhouses developing new crops. Human teachers taught mixed species classes. No one imagined danger was near. Human volunteers often traveled in large convoys carrying supplies to different towns. These convoys were made up of ground vehicles loaded with medical kits, food boxes, and clean water. The volunteers inside them were mostly ordinary citizens who simply wanted to help others. They never carried weapons because they trusted their world to stay peaceful. One week, a convoy left the central hub to bring medicine to a village where a rare illness had appeared. The volunteers inside were in good spirits. They joked with one another, played music, and shared stories about the many people they had met while working on the planet. They were proud of their duty because helping others made them feel human in the best sense of the word. What they didn't know was that several groups from the coalition were watching them. These groups had secretly entered Helion 5 in small numbers. They had planned to show the galaxy that humans could be frightened. They wanted to send a message that would break humanity's reputation for calmness. What they didn't expect was that an unrelated gathering of alien civilians would be passing near the same road at the same time, heading to a cultural festival in the nearby town. When the attack began, it was sudden. Smoke filled the air as the convoy's vehicles were trapped in a narrow valley. But the attackers had made a mistake. The alien civilians nearby panicked, unsure of what was happening. Many hid behind rocks or trees, but others were trapped in the open. The volunteers inside the convoy saw this immediately. Instead of running away, several of them ran toward the frightened civilians to guide them to safety. This was the first thing the attackers did not expect. They thought humans would only protect themselves. They had not understood that to humans, helping others came naturally, even in danger. The volunteers formed small groups, guiding families to safer ground. They linked arms with strangers, lifted children, and encouraged those who struggled to move. The attackers hesitated, confused by the behavior they saw. In their minds, humans should have been terrified. Instead, they were calm, focused, and brave. This was not weakness. It was something else, something stronger. The event was recorded accidentally by a young alien who had been filming the journey for fun. The camera recorded the smoke, the shouts, and the humans guiding people away from danger. It showed a human volunteer shielding an elderly alien with their own body, speaking softly to keep them calm. It showed another volunteer helping a group climb a rocky slope. Even in the middle of chaos, the humans were gentle and steady. When fleets in orbit detected distress signals, emergency teams rushed down to the surface. By the time they arrived, the immediate danger was ending, but the world had changed. The attackers had fled, leaving confusion behind them. The human volunteers were treated for injuries. Thankfully, no life was lost. But the emotional shock spread faster than any weapon ever could. The footage uploaded by the young alien reached millions within hours. Across the galaxy, species watched in silence. They had expected humans to panic. Instead, they saw ordinary people choosing to help strangers, even while hurt themselves. They saw patience turning into courage in a way no one expected. Some species felt shame. Some felt admiration. Others, who had mocked humans for years, felt a rising fear because they finally understood something important. If humans could act with such calm bravery under attack, how strong would they be if they ever stopped holding back their patience? Within human governments, leaders watched the footage again and again. They had tolerated a lot, but this incident was different. Their people had been targeted while helping others. Innocent civilians, both human and alien, had been put in danger. Leaders who had once insisted on patience now sat in silence, knowing a decision had to be made. The galaxy felt the change even before humanity said a word. Something quiet and powerful had shifted. The calm patience humans were known for had reached its breaking point, and every species sensed that whatever humanity did next would reshape the galaxy for a long time. This was the moment before everything changed, the silent breath held across star systems, a moment that no species would soon forget. When the attack on the humanitarian convoy happened on Helion 5, it did more than damage a few vehicles or frighten a group of civilians. It shook something deep inside humanity. For years, humans had chosen patience. They had accepted insults, ignored provocations, and continued helping others even when their kindness was mistaken for weakness. But this time, The galaxy had seen the truth with its own eyes. The footage recorded by the young alien spread faster than any official message ever could. Every corner of the galaxy replayed the same scenes. Human volunteers guiding civilians to shelter. A volunteer lifting a frightened child. Another helping an elderly alien walk to safety, even while injured. The calm voices, the steady movements, the quiet strength, it was all captured in that short clip. And because it was natural and unplanned, everyone believed it. On many planets, crowds gathered in public squares to watch it on giant screens. Some watched in awe. Some watched with guilt. Others watched with fear. Commentators on news channels discussed it nonstop. Some said humanity had shown its true colors, not weak, not passive, but impossibly patient and incredibly disciplined. Others said the convoy attack was only the surface of a much deeper problem. If groups felt bold enough to target peaceful volunteers, what would happen next? Helion 5 became the center of the galaxy's attention overnight. Reporters rushed to the planet. They wanted to talk to the volunteers, the rescued civilians, and even the security teams who arrived later. But humans refused to let the moment turn into a dramatic show. Their priority was still the injured, the frightened, and the families who had been caught in the chaos. The humanitarian hub on Helion 5 became busier than ever. Volunteers worked day and night to calm people, give medical support, and reassure the population that they were safe. Even the alien families who had once doubted humans now looked at them with new respect. Many were surprised at how gentle the volunteers stayed, even after what happened. They expected anger or fear, but humans stayed composed. They were shaken on the inside, but they refused to show panic. What the galaxy didn't know was that behind the scenes, things were changing rapidly. Human leaders across several systems gathered in secure communication rooms. They replayed the footage repeatedly, sometimes in silence, sometimes with quiet discussions. Human experts studied the attack patterns, the timing, the attackers' escape routes, and the strange delays in communication between Helion 5 and other human worlds. Something didn't add up. It didn't look like a random act. It felt rehearsed. Reports soon confirmed that the attackers were members of the anti-human coalition. This coalition had been slowly gaining influence. They didn't like how humans helped smaller species, formed peaceful groups, and built alliances without using threats. To them, humanity's kindness was an obstacle. Their goal was to push humans into a corner, to make them withdraw from helping others. What they didn't understand was that humans did not back down from responsibility. They might step back from conflict, but never from doing what they felt was right. As details surfaced, people across human space grew restless. The public rarely demanded action, but this time emotions were stronger. Messages from citizens flooded the human councils. Some said the volunteers deserved better protection. Others said the entire galaxy had misjudged humans for far too long. A few believed patience had reached its limit. Still, human leaders refused to respond with anger. They wanted the truth first. They wanted to understand why the coalition had chosen a humanitarian convoy instead of a military target. What did they hope to gain? Why risk harming innocent aliens on the planet? Why choose a moment when cameras could easily expose them? Nothing about the attack was logical on the surface. Meanwhile, the volunteers who had been caught in the attack received visitors from across the planet. Alien families came with gifts, food, and handwritten notes. Children drew pictures of the humans who had helped them. One civilian group created a mural on the wall of a community center showing humans standing in a circle around different species, offering protection. The artwork touched the volunteers deeply. Many of them had joined the humanitarian mission simply to help others. They never expected the galaxy to watch their actions or paint them as symbols. The volunteers gave simple interviews when asked. They were humble, saying they only did what anyone should do. They didn't consider themselves heroes. They were only people trying to make the world kinder. But their plain words made the galaxy listen even more. It was clear that humans didn't act for fame or praise. They acted because compassion was natural to them. The coalition, on the other hand, denied involvement at first. They said the attackers were rebels or criminals trying to cause trouble. But the evidence against them grew quickly. Communication intercepts pointed directly to certain leaders. Hidden funding trails were uncovered. Witnesses reported movement of suspicious ships through restricted areas. And worst of all, private messages between coalition members were leaked, showing that they had intentionally targeted a peaceful convoy to embarrass humans. When the truth came out, the galaxy held its breath. Some expected humans to retaliate immediately. Others expected angry speeches. But humans surprised everyone once again. They didn't yell, threaten, or rush to punish. They simply made a calm announcement stating that the truth was known and that they were taking time to decide the next steps carefully. This quiet response made the coalition uneasy. They had expected emotional outbursts or wild accusations. Instead, humanity's calm reaction raised fear among them because it meant humans were thinking deeply, not reacting blindly. On Helion 5, life slowly returned to normal. But a new feeling lingered in the air. People walked a little more carefully. Families stayed indoors more often. And almost everyone looked at the sky with a mixture of hope and concern. They trusted humans to keep them safe, but they also sensed something larger building beyond the horizon. One evening, a group of human volunteers gathered outside the hub. They sat under the soft glow of lanterns, sharing warm drinks and talking quietly. Most of them were tired, both physically and emotionally. The attack had shaken them more than they admitted. One volunteer said it didn't feel like random hostility anymore. It felt like the galaxy was being pushed toward a breaking point. Another volunteer wondered aloud whether humanity's patience had protected the galaxy for longer than people realized. As they talked, an older volunteer spoke up. He wasn't famous or high-ranked. He was just someone who had lived long enough to understand human nature. He said that humanity's patience was not a shield, but a choice. Humans had chosen peace for years because they believed every species deserved a chance to grow without fear. They had chosen dialogue because they believed problems could be solved without pain. But choices could change when others misunderstood them. He explained that patience was powerful only when respected. When it was exploited, it transformed into something else, something much stronger, something the galaxy had not yet seen. Back in human government centers, preparations began. Not for war, but for something far more controlled. Human strategists quietly reviewed old plans. Engineers inspected technologies that had never been revealed to the galaxy. Diplomats sent messages to allies asking for cooperation. Everything was done quietly, calmly, and professionally. There were no loud announcements, no flashy movements, just silent organization. Across human space, fleets that had been scattered for peaceful missions slowly repositioned. Supply lines were strengthened. Communication networks were upgraded. None of it looked aggressive. It looked like preparation, but not for chaos. It looked like preparation for order. Human intelligence teams discovered that the coalition was planning more disruptions. They were preparing to block trade routes, interrupt emergency signals, and push propaganda across different systems to make humans look responsible for the unrest. These discoveries did not anger human leaders. Instead, they focused them. The galaxy didn't know it, but humanity was no longer waiting. They were watching, planning, and preparing for the right moment to act, not in rage, but in clarity. As midnight fell on Helion 5, the sky shimmered with distant lights from satellites adjusting their positions. People didn't know what the movement meant, but they sensed change. Something calm, something strong, something quietly rising. It was the beginning of a turning point, the moment before destiny shifted. A moment held in silence as humanity's patience approached its final limit. The next part of the story would show what happened when patience ended and real power finally awakened. The weeks after the Helion 5 attack were unlike any humanity had ever experienced. Across countless star systems, humans quietly organized themselves. No loud proclamations, no threats, no visible buildup of weapons. To outsiders, it might have seemed like nothing was happening at all. But behind the calm surface, every human council, every volunteer group, every fleet, and every engineer worked with quiet intensity. They were preparing not to destroy, but to protect, not to punish, but to make sure the galaxy would understand humanity in a way that words alone could never explain. The first step was observation. Humans already had a network of observation satellites, long thought of as peaceful monitoring tools, watching traffic, weather, and communication across multiple systems. Now these satellites were used to map patterns of the Coalition's movements. Ships that had once appeared random now formed a clear pattern of planning and coordination. Trade routes, supply lines, and communication relays were all charted. Every detail mattered because humans knew the best strategy was knowledge. They had always believed that power without understanding was dangerous, and this was the moment to prove that patience paired with knowledge could become an unstoppable force. Meanwhile, the engineers quietly upgraded the fleet. Ships that had been thought outdated or retrofitted with technologies never revealed to the galaxy. Some were simple improvements in navigation and communication, while others were sophisticated. Defenses that could disable systems without causing harm. Scientists discovered ways to remotely neutralize mechanical threats with precision, ensuring that humans could protect others without destruction. This wasn't about weapons for attack, it was about tools for control, ensuring that the Coalition could never harm innocent civilians again. Human intelligence teams worked quietly across multiple systems. They intercepted messages, tracked hidden movements, and learned about the Coalition's plans. Every new piece of information was shared immediately and analyzed carefully. Humans had never acted recklessly, and this was no different. They understood that impatience could lead to mistakes, and mistakes could cost lives. Every action was considered, every move calculated. Meanwhile, diplomats reached out to neighboring species and allies, explaining that humans did not seek war, but that continued provocations could no longer be ignored. They sent subtle messages, showing that humans were watching, aware, and capable of incredible coordination. The Coalition, which had once laughed at human patience, began to feel a quiet unease. They could sense that humans were preparing, though nothing seemed visible. And for the first time, they realized that humans might not respond with anger, but that didn't mean they were powerless. On Helion 5, the people who had lived through the attack noticed changes as well. Human volunteers began working in a more structured way, not because they were afraid, but because they understood that preparedness could save lives. Villages and towns were reorganized for safety. Evacuation routes were carefully planned, medical centers were strengthened, and communication networks were improved so that no warning would ever be missed again. It was subtle, quiet work, but everyone on the planet noticed a new sense of order. In space, human fleets repositioned slowly, almost invisibly. Ships moved to strategic locations, not in aggression, but in readiness. The galaxy, watching from the outside, saw little movement and assumed humans were still calm, passive, and perhaps hesitant. They did not see the planning behind every maneuver, the care with which humans ensured every system was connected, every fleet informed, every planet safe. This was a new kind of power, one that didn't scream or roar, but silently grew stronger every day. Meanwhile, the Coalition made small mistakes. Their arrogance made them visible. Ships appeared where they shouldn't, Messages were intercepted, and secret supply routes were discovered. Every mistake was quietly noted by human intelligence teams. Every risk was calculated. Humans understood that they had a chance not just to respond, but to show the galaxy what patience could achieve when combined with preparation. On Helion 5, children began to notice the difference too. They watched. The volunteers not just helping after incidents, but preparing for possible dangers. They learned that humans didn't act out of fear, nor did they seek conflict. They acted because they cared, and because they believed in order and protection. The adults explained that patience wasn't passive. It was careful thinking, steady observation, and responsible planning. And when the time came, patience could transform into action that no one would forget. Citizens across multiple human planets began to feel the quiet energy of change. Everyday life continued, but there was a shared sense of purpose. Traders, teachers, engineers, and volunteers all noticed subtle shifts in how their systems were being prepared. Every small action, every tiny improvement, was part of a larger plan. Humans did not talk about it because they didn't need to. They knew that strength was not measured by words, but by results. As months passed, coalition leaders grew restless. They began planning new provocations, thinking that humans were still passive, still unwilling to confront them. But humans were ready. They had studied every possible scenario. Every fleet movement, every diplomatic message, every volunteer mission had been coordinated with precision. Humans were no longer just responding. They were anticipating, controlling, and preparing to act in a way that would show the galaxy their true nature. One evening, in a quiet communication room orbiting a neutral system, a human strategist summarized the situation. "They believe our patience is weakness," they said softly. "But patience is only weakness when it is misunderstood. They are about to learn what it truly means to underestimate humans." Around the room, others nodded silently. There was no arrogance in their faces, only calm determination. Even among the volunteers and humanitarian workers, the change was evident. They still helped, still treated everyone equally, still smiled when greeting others. But beneath their calm exteriors was a quiet readiness, a sense that if anyone threatened, the innocent again, humans were prepared in ways no one could imagine. This preparation was invisible, subtle, almost unnoticeable to the galaxy, but it was real, and it was powerful. Aliens observing humans from afar began to notice small changes too. Trade convoys that were once slow and predictable now moved efficiently and carefully, avoiding unnecessary risks. Messages that had once been open were now carefully encrypted and monitored. Satellites repositioned silently. Ship fleets moved in ways that seemed natural, but that had hidden strategic advantages. Humans were everywhere, and yet nowhere, quietly, preparing for a moment no one else could fully understand. Back on Helion 5, the children asked volunteers why everything seemed different. One volunteer explained gently, "We are not changing who we are. We are still the same people who care, who help, who protect. But sometimes caring also means preparing. And preparing means making sure everyone is safe, no matter what comes." The children nodded, not fully understanding yet, but feeling the sense of calm confidence around them. In the coalition's secret command centers, doubt began to creep in. Their leaders whispered to one another, wondering how humans could remain so calm while clearly preparing. Every intercepted message showed intelligence, discipline, and precision. They had assumed patience meant hesitation. They had assumed humanity's kindness meant weakness. They were beginning to realize that every calculation, every careful step humans had taken, made them far more powerful than anyone had thought. Human leaders knew that the moment of patience ending was approaching. They had not yet acted, not yet revealed the full extent of their preparation. But they could feel the shift in energy across human space. Volunteers, engineers, diplomats, And fleet commanders all understood the same thing. The galaxy would soon see that patience was never weakness. And when humans acted, it would not be in anger, it would be in clarity, control, and precision. In the quiet hours of the night on Helion 5, volunteers gathered again under the soft glow of the stars. They spoke quietly, not about revenge, not about punishment, but about responsibility. They had learned that protecting others required careful planning. They had learned that patience was not just waiting, but building the tools, networks, and knowledge needed to act effectively when the time came. And they all understood that humanity's true strength had always been hidden behind that patience. Across the galaxy, species who had mocked humans now watched with growing unease. They did not know the full scope of the preparation, but they sensed the quiet tension. Something was coming, something controlled, precise, and powerful. And they knew, even if they could not fully explain it, that humans were no longer simply waiting. They were ready. The stage was set. The moment before action had arrived. Humanity had transformed patience into preparation, kindness into strategy, and calm into power. The galaxy had watched humans suffer, witness injustice, and face danger without striking back. But now, everyone could feel the change. Every species could sense that the era of underestimating humanity was ending. When the first move was made, it would not be reckless, loud, or chaotic. It would be deliberate, intelligent, and unstoppable. Humanity had learned that the greatest power was not in weapons, not in intimidation, but in patience guided by preparation. And in that quiet, the day finally came when humanity's patience transformed into action. It was not sudden. There was no chaos, no shouting, no wild attacks. Everything happened quietly, deliberately, and with a precision that left the galaxy in awe. The coalition that had once mocked humans and their calmness was about to learn something they had never expected. They had seen patience as weakness. They had assumed that humanity would hesitate, falter, or avoid confrontation. They were wrong. It started in the quiet of space. Human fleets had moved into position months before, seemingly idle but perfectly coordinated. Ships that had once carried supplies, scientific instruments, and volunteers were now aligned with strategic precision. Communications networks hummed quietly, satellites repositioned themselves, and surveillance systems tracked every movement of the coalition. Human strategists had already studied every potential outcome and prepared multiple responses, each designed to protect civilians while demonstrating absolute control. As the coalition moved to disrupt trade routes near Helion 5, they were the first to notice something unusual. Ships that had seemed scattered suddenly appeared in positions that should have been impossible. Supply convoys and patrol fleets moved like a single organism, covering every route and anticipating every move. The coalition's commanders could not understand how humans had achieved such coordination so quickly. They began to realize that the patience they had underestimated was not passive. It was preparation. The first signs of humanity's new power were subtle. Communications relays controlled by humans suddenly gained priority access, allowing messages from civilians and peaceful alien communities to travel instantly. Navigation systems on coalition ships started to experience delays and malfunctions. Machines that had once operated without interference now responded to humans in ways no one had thought possible. The coalition panicked as their carefully laid plans began to fail, not because of weapons, but because humans had understood their every action before it happened. On Helion 5, volunteers and civilians noticed the changes in real time. They saw ships maneuvering with skill that seemed almost impossible. They watched as human teams coordinated rescue operations, supply deliveries, and communications simultaneously. It was like watching a perfectly choreographed dance. And throughout it all, humans remained calm, steady, and composed. They did not act out of anger. They acted because they were ready and because they had to protect the innocent. The coalition tried to respond with aggression, but their efforts failed. Their ships slowed unexpectedly, their communication systems were intercepted, and their supply lines were blocked without any damage being done. Humans had designed every action to neutralize threats without causing unnecessary destruction. Civilians on affected planets were never in danger. It was not chaos, it was controlled, precise power. And the galaxy was watching, unable to look away. Meanwhile, human leaders coordinated with allied species. Diplomats and strategists ensured that every action taken by humanity was understood as defensive, not offensive. Messages were sent to coalition leaders, explaining that humans had observed their provocations and could no longer allow them to threaten peaceful populations. There were no threats of revenge, no arrogant speeches, only facts, only careful demonstration of control. The coalition tried to retreat, but every escape route had already been anticipated. Human ships moved with silent precision, appearing where they were needed before the coalition could even react. Supply chains were disrupted without harm, and communications were secured. The coalition realized they were outmatched not because of superior firepower, but because humans had prepared every step, understood every move, and had acted at exactly the right moment. On Helion 5, volunteers continued their work among the civilians, guiding them calmly, delivering supplies and ensuring safety. The people on the planet began to understand the true extent of human power. They realized that strength was not measured by weapons or aggression, but by discipline, intelligence, and the ability to act at the right moment. Every human involved, from fleet commanders to volunteers on the ground, demonstrated that patience had been more than a choice. It had been preparation for this very moment. The coalition's leaders were forced to communicate directly with human commanders. They expected anger, threats, or retaliation. Instead, they found calm determination and clear explanations. Humans outlined exactly what had happened, how their actions had neutralized the coalition's plans, and what would happen if further provocations occurred. The message was clear. Humans did not seek revenge, but they were fully capable of protecting themselves and others. The galaxy watched in silence. Species that had once doubted humanity began to understand something new. Humans were not impulsive, reckless, or weak. Their patience had been a choice, but their preparation had been immense. The combination of careful observation, planning, and precision had allowed humanity to act in a way that neutralized threats completely, without causing harm to civilians or infrastructure. It was a demonstration of power unlike anything this galaxy had seen. Even those who had been critical of humanity began to speak differently. Analysts and commentators described the events as a turning point. They said that no species had ever coordinated so carefully, so patiently, and so effectively. They noted that humans had acted without arrogance, without pride, and without unnecessary force. It was a new definition of strength, one based on understanding, intelligence, and responsibility. Volunteers on Helion 5 shared their experiences with the world. They spoke about fear, courage, and the importance of protecting others. They emphasized that the calm, steady action was not about heroism, but about human nature. Helping others was what humans did naturally. Planning and preparing to act when necessary was what humans did best. Their stories inspired others across the galaxy, showing that patience was not weakness, but a hidden strength that could change everything. In coalition territories, leaders struggled to regain control. Their ships were immobilized without damage. Their communication networks were overridden without destruction, and their plans were completely neutralized. They realized that humanity's patience had been a trap, not malicious, not cruel, but precise and undeniable. Every attempt to escape or retaliate was anticipated and countered with precision. They could not win against humans, not because humans sought to conquer, but because humans had mastered preparation and understanding in a way no one else had. On human worlds, celebrations were quiet but heartfelt. People did not cheer for destruction or victory over enemies. They celebrated the protection of civilians, the success of careful planning, and the proof that patience and preparation could achieve what brute force never could. Families, volunteers, scientists, engineers, and leaders shared stories about the moment the galaxy finally understood humanity's true power. It was a moment of pride, not arrogance, a moment of understanding, not domination. As weeks passed, coalition leaders surrendered peacefully. They understood that humans had won, not by overwhelming violence, but by intelligence, discipline, and precision. They acknowledged that their misjudgment of human patience had been a serious error. Humans did not humiliate or punish them. Instead, they established clear agreements to prevent further conflict, ensuring safety for all species. The galaxy witnessed a new era, one defined by careful control, responsibility, and the power of patience turned into preparation. Even long after the events, historians studied the incident as a turning point. They wrote about how patience, discipline, and intelligence could become greater than weapons. They described how humanity acted calmly, protected civilians, and demonstrated power without chaos. Across the galaxy, species that had once doubted humans now respected them profoundly. On Helion 5, volunteers returned to their daily work, helping communities, teaching children, and caring for the sick. But everyone knew something had changed. Humanity's true power had been revealed, not through anger, not through aggression, but through careful, disciplined action when the moment demanded it. Every citizen understood that their patience had been tested and that it had passed with clarity and strength. The coalition, once confident in their superiority, now respected the humans they had underestimated. They learned that strength could come quietly, without loud weapons or violent displays. And they learned that humanity's patience, once misunderstood, had been the source of a power no one would forget. From that day forward, no species doubted humanity's capability. No one questioned whether humans could defend themselves, protect the innocent, or act with intelligence and precision when necessary. The galaxy had witnessed what happens when patience is paired with preparation. And every species understood the lesson clearly. Patience is not weakness, and preparation is power. And on Helion 5, as volunteers worked under the evening sky, people quietly reflected on what had happened. They realized that humans had acted not out of anger, but out of responsibility. They had shown the galaxy that true power lies in calmness, understanding, and the courage to act at the right time. Humanity's patience had finally revealed its real strength, and no one in the galaxy would ever forget it. After humanity had revealed the full extent of its preparation and control, the galaxy entered a period of quiet reflection. It was no longer about conflict or aggression. It was about understanding. Every species, from the smallest traders to the largest fleets, began to realize that humans were not just patient, they were deliberate, disciplined, and capable of extraordinary coordination. What had once seemed like hesitation or weakness was now recognized as a profound form of strength. The coalition that had once mocked humans was now forced to accept a new reality. Their leaders met quietly with human representatives, not in anger, but in cautious respect. They had expected punishment, threats, or retaliation, but humans offered none. Instead, the humans proposed agreements designed to prevent future conflict and protect civilians across the galaxy. The coalition realized that humanity had never acted for conquest or revenge. Their patience had been a shield, and now their preparation had been a demonstration of power. Across human worlds, citizens were still quietly going about their lives. Volunteers returned to hospitals, classrooms, and communities. Engineers resumed their work on infrastructure and technology. Fleet commanders conducted routine exercises, not for combat, but to ensure that the systems protecting civilians remained effective. Even as life appeared ordinary, there was a shared understanding among humans that something fundamental had changed. The galaxy had finally seen what humanity could do when it acted with intention, discipline, and care. On Helion 5, the volunteers who had first faced the attack watched as the world around them adjusted. The villagers and alien families they had protected now looked at them with deep gratitude. But the volunteers themselves felt something different. They were proud not because of victory over an enemy, but because they had helped ensure the safety of everyone around them. Their courage had been tested in a quiet, understated way, and the galaxy had witnessed it. Even the children who had once been afraid during the convoy attack began to understand. They saw that bravery did not always involve fighting or weapons. It could be about staying calm in the face of danger, helping others, and preparing wisely for the future. Teachers and parents spoke to them about the importance of patience, intelligence, and responsibility. These lessons, learned through observation and experience, would stay with them for the rest of their lives. The humans who had coordinated the response worked tirelessly to ensure that the coalition could no longer disrupt peaceful life. Supply chains that had once been vulnerable were now secure. Communication networks were strengthened to prevent interference. Observation systems monitored potential threats without intruding on daily life. Every action was designed to maintain order, protect the innocent, and demonstrate that power did not need to be destructive to be respected. In coalition territories, leaders slowly adjusted to this new reality. They realized that their arrogance had been a mistake. They had assumed that humans would react out of emotion, that kindness was weakness, and that patience meant hesitation. They were wrong. Humans had acted with calm intelligence, protecting civilians, neutralizing threats without destruction, and demonstrating the depth of their capability. The coalition could not undo the lesson they had learned. Humans were a force unlike any other. Across the galaxy, other species watched and began to change their perception of humanity. They no longer saw humans as naive or easily influenced. They saw a species that balanced compassion with intelligence, patience with preparation, and restraint with power. Scholars and diplomats wrote about the events for generations, describing how humans had acted decisively, without unnecessary harm, yet with complete control. This was a moment that would be remembered for centuries, a moment that redefined the meaning of strength. On Helion 5, life continued, but there was a sense of calm confidence in the air. Volunteers guided children through lessons about helping others and protecting the vulnerable. Adults spoke to each other about the importance of careful planning and foresight. Even simple activities, like planting crops, building shelters, or repairing roads, carried a sense of purpose. Humanity had shown its strength was not in loud displays, but in steady, thoughtful action that could protect and improve lives. Meanwhile, human leaders worked quietly with other species to create new systems of cooperation. Agreements were made to share knowledge, coordinate humanitarian efforts, and ensure that no species could easily threaten another. These agreements were not imposed. They were built on mutual respect and understanding. The coalition, once an enemy, now participated in these efforts, acknowledging that humans had shown them a different way to lead and protect their people. In the cities and towns of human worlds, people talked quietly about what had happened. Stories were shared of volunteers who had helped civilians, of engineers who had strengthened systems, and of fleets that had moved with precision to protect entire regions. The emphasis was never on victory or power, but on responsibility and care. People realized that true strength lay in the ability to act when needed, to protect life, and to maintain order with intelligence and discipline. Even artists and storytellers took note. They painted murals and wrote songs about the events, not glorifying war, but honoring courage, patience, and the quiet heroism of everyday people. They told stories of volunteers guiding families to safety, of engineers designing systems to prevent harm, and of humans demonstrating power through preparation and responsibility. These stories spread across species, inspiring others to act with care, intelligence, and patience in their own lives. The coalition slowly began to adjust its behavior as well. They adopted similar methods of careful planning and observation. They realized that humans did not need violence to demonstrate power. The lesson had been clear. Patience, preparation, and responsible action could achieve results that no aggression could. Over time, they adopted these principles, and the galaxy slowly began to experience a new era of cooperation, respect, and stability. On Helion 5, as night fell, the volunteers and civilians looked up at the stars. They had seen what humanity could do when patience met preparation. They had witnessed a species acting calmly, intelligently, and decisively, and they knew the galaxy had changed forever. There was a quiet pride in the air, not arrogance, not triumph, but a deep understanding of responsibility, strength, and care. Even years later, historians would mark this moment as the day the galaxy realized something profound. Humans had not become powerful through weapons or aggression, but through patience, preparation, and the courage to act for the right reasons. No species could forget it, because it had been shown in a way that was both undeniable and inspiring. Every volunteer, engineer, diplomat, and citizen who had contributed to these events knew that their efforts mattered. They had participated in a demonstration of what humans could achieve when guided by intelligence, compassion, and foresight. And they had done it without arrogance, without destruction, and without fear. The coalition, once the aggressor, now worked alongside humanity to ensure that no future provocations could threaten innocent lives. Other species, too, adopted similar methods of careful planning and cooperation. Across the galaxy, humans became recognized not only for their bravery, but for their wisdom, their discipline, and their ability to act responsibly. And on Helion 5, the people returned to their daily lives. Children played under the safe watch of volunteers. Families rebuilt and thrived. Communities worked together to strengthen their world. And in every heart, there was the quiet knowledge that humanity had revealed its true power not through force, not through anger, but through patience, intelligence, and the courage to act at the right time. From that day forward, no species doubted humanity's capabilities. The galaxy would never forget the moment when humans' patience finally transformed into action. Every species learned a new definition of strength. It was not in aggression, not in loud displays, but in calm, careful preparation, intelligent planning, and responsibility toward others. And as the stars shone above Helion 5, the volunteers, engineers, and citizens looked to the future with quiet confidence. Humanity had shown the galaxy that true power lay in patience that is never passive, in kindness that is never weak, and in preparation that could protect millions. It was a lesson that no species would ever forget, a moment that had changed the course of the galaxy forever. The moment humanity revealed its real strength was not marked by chaos or destruction. It was marked by clarity, care, and the quiet knowledge that responsibility, preparation, and intelligence could achieve what aggression never could. The galaxy had watched, learned, and would remember forever, and humanity continued, as it always had, not seeking conquest, not seeking revenge, but seeking to protect, to build, and to show that the greatest power was the one exercised wisely, patiently, and with care for all life. No species would ever forget that moment, the moment when humanity's patience finally unleashed its true power.